Imagine you played 50 NL for a month, you played 45,000 hands, and at the end of that month you could choose the green line or the purple line. Which one would you choose? You choose the green one, but most of us are on the purple one. The difference between these two lines is that when I drew the purple one, I just exaggerated the magnitude of all of the losing stretches to simulate what happens to you, to me, to almost every human being that plays poker. This discrepancy between optimal performance and real life performance over the course of a month or a year is caused by the natural human reaction to losing. And it's the fact that losing causes us to play so much worse than we otherwise would that is the difference between success and failure, between being able to become a professional poker player and not, between supporting your family and having to get a different choice of career. This is a big deal. Let's illustrate the human reaction to losing by looking at a hand that I played this morning where I lost 160 big blinds, and then we'll get into how to fix it. We open the 6-8 of clubs in a small blind, and our reg opponent makes the call. The flop is Jack 7-9 rainbow. We're going to go for some medium-sized bets and some checks here. We check this time, and we face a big bet. We decide to call. We can go both ways, call and raise, both being fine in theory. In practice, I do lean towards call in this spot, simply because the very big stab bet on this hexture is typically going to be a bit too equity heavy. It's going to be many value hands, 2-pair, set straights, some high equity bluffs like Queen 10, things like that. Some lower equity bluffs too, perhaps, but not as many as there should be in theory, and that's why I think check raise might be a bit inferior to check call here. On the deuce of clubs turn, we check and villain goes for an overbet. At 100 big blinds, this is a pretty standard spot. We can rip this hand because we're getting villain to fold a load of their lower equity bluffs here and even some of their medium equity bluffs, and our hand is the perfect jam. We have heaps of redraw equity when we run into something like a set, and we can make villain fold loads of hands that we just can't win against that showdown by check calling. At this stack depth, we're reopening. It's very expensive to shove. I think check call might be better. I certainly think check call and check shove at 100 big blinds are both better than check fold. And here I think this line might take the lead, especially with the read that they have the nuts too often, and especially if they're going to 3-bet shove the turn to just deny equity as humans like to do. The river's the 5 of spades. We get there. We have the second nuts effectively, and villain makes this jam. This spot sucks. They're probably under bluffing this sizing in this scenario at 100 NL overall. However, we have a value beater. We still beat sets. We chop with 6-8. 6-8 offsuit could be in villain's range. We block 10-8, reducing the combos from 16 to 12, but it always sucks when offsuit straights are a big part of your opponent's range. That said, I don't think we can fold here. I think this is a quote-unquote cooler, although I've got a lot of beef with that term and how it's used. I do think it's applicable here. We run into the 10-8. I'd like you to place yourself in my shoes at this point and ask 3 key questions. First thing I want you to answer is, what is your emotional state in the 10 seconds directly after this happens to you? Write down a couple of emotions. Don't think about it too hard. Second question, what are your first few thoughts? Be honest. Again, don't overthink it. Jot them down if you want to, or just keep them in your head if that's easier. And the third question is, what is your play like for the next 10 or 15 minutes? I'll tell you what I think would happen to me and what would happen to most of the people I've ever taught. In my many years of coaching, I've learned that as humans, we react quite uniformly to the same stimuli. We don't actually vary that much in our reactions to stuff like this. To answer question 1, the normal emotional state will depend on how you've been running, how you've been perceiving yourself, your luck variance, the session so far, how confident and happy you are. If you've been having a bad session, you might react with frustration, anger, just extreme disappointment. You might even feel kind of hopeless and dejected. If your session's been going okay, you'll feel a more minor version of that, so maybe just like slight disappointment, like a bit of anguish. It'll be more short-lived, it won't be as extreme. Point number 2 is, what are your first few thoughts? Again, that's going to vary based on how many of these beats you've just taken, like how many coolers you perceive that you've had. But overall, you might say something like, of course they had that, I had a feeling he had that, this always happens to me, they are never bluffing their nets. You might turn it against pool, go a bit ad hominem about it and say, they're stupid nets, they never bluffed me here, of course he had that hand. Or you might turn it against yourself and say, god damn it, why didn't I fold when I know this is always 10-8? And of course it's not always 10-8, but it can feel that way when you fear 10-8 and then you're shown 10-8. It's very normal when you're feeling emotional to infer that you knew it was 10-8. You actually didn't, but I'll hold off on my big rant about what knowledge is. And the third thing is, how does your play change over the next 10 to 15 minutes? Well, for most of us, we become more desperate, we become more reactive, volatile, we have anger and frustration driving the core of our decision-making engine. And what those emotions do is that they try to affect change in the world, right? If you think about the difference between being deflated or depressed and being angry is about making something happen. Your body's core coursing with adrenaline. You're going out to fight. You're going out to make right the situation in which you think you've been wronged. And that's a wholly inappropriate response for a poker player because, of course, this is done now. You can't go back and win this pot. You can't use brute force to get your money back. You're about to just be thrown into some totally unrelated, causally independent scenarios where you have to come up with the right conclusion, and hanging on to this as a causally relevant event is going to make that harder for you. And the thing about poker is it's going to test you very soon. And you better make sure that you're in a state of mind where you can pass that test if you want to have the win rate that you believe you're capable of having. There's a disconnect between what we think we can do if we were on our A game all the time and what actually happens to us due to our reaction to loss. In this hand, we had the Queen 3 of clubs. We opened the button. We got called by, an aggressive-ish reg in the big blind, and we go to the flop of 7-5-5, both bet and check. Are fine here. I'm playing small bets and checks. I check the hand this time, and on the turn I'm playing B100, pot size bet or check. I bet the hand. Villain raises. This is unexpected. This is annoying. It comes out of the blue. You don't want to fold because you have a flush draw that you didn't bet on the flop, and what are they saying they have? Do they really have a 5 here? Do they really have pocket 7s? They're not repping a great deal for value. You don't want to fold in this spot. But you should fold in this spot because your flush draw is just a bit too dominated and you don't have much showdown value with just the queen high. That means that you're probably going to have to bet the river to win when villain gives up. And while that will usually get through because there's a lot of fold equity in that spot, there are some times when villain hits the river, check calls, you lose an extra bet, that sort of thing. So your indifference point here, according to the solver, is around the king 3 of clubs, queen 3 being a pure fold. It's not a gigantic error to call here. It's less than a big blind error, but it's not a good call. And in game, this was shortly after that last hand, and I was a bit frustrated. Okay, I wasn't on lunatic tilt here. I wasn't losing my mind and desperate to get my money back, but I was thrown off of my A game enough that I desired not to lose this pot in this way by playing a bit non-standard lay for pool with a flush draw, checking back the flop, potting the turn, then just folding to a raise. I didn't want that to be the way the hand went. And so I used my frustration to try to effect change in the world. I went out in my cave. I tried to hunt and gather and slay a mammoth here. And I decided to call here and then see what happens on the river. And on the river, villain went all in and I made a flush. And we were thrown another test. And a major test, because now picture yourself in my shoes. I've called a turn. I know it's a bit dicey. Don't get me wrong. I know full well that what I'm doing might be a theoretical mistake when I call the turn here. I do it anyway. And then I hit a flush and I'm like, okay, I got away with it. Thank God for that. Oh, God. Probably shouldn't have called a turn. And then this happens and I'm like, uh-oh. And when your first instinct is, uh-oh, you should probably fold because very often that's pattern recognition kicking in before your coercive, manipulative mental game brain can kick in and try and get you to recoup your losses from the 8-6 of clubs hand. I'm so sick of having clubs, by the way. Clubs are cursed. And so I called here. No, I didn't really. I folded. But I could have called here, and it would have been a big mistake against this population. Is my hand a fold in theory at this point? Possibly not. Is it indifferent? Yeah, I think so. Is it a bluff catcher? Absolutely. Villain is not shoving 2x pot on the flush river paired board with a straight or with a bad flush. They're saying they have minimum nut flush, but more likely about their value region here being 7-5 suited, quad 5s, pocket 7s, or they're saying that they have a bluff. Takes quite a lot of courage to just jam the river for 2x pot with a bluff in this spot that doesn't contain the ace of clubs, because I can just have the nut flush. Maybe I bet the flop with that a lot. Maybe with 10s I usually bet the flop. I don't have that. I definitely have not so many boats here. I have some boats here, but not many at all. And so if you're really thinking about it, maybe you can find bluffs here and maybe it's a great spot to bluff 2x spot, but population isn't usually doing that. 90% plus of the humans that play low stakes, micro stakes games, the stakes that you guys are by and large playing, are not bluffing the spot in this way. And so while you require 40% equity to make this call break even, you probably lose 80% of the time here against your population and you should fold. But it's very hard to make this fold. It's very hard. And what you have to do to make this fold is you really have to treat this as an independent situation. If your gut says fold, it's actually drawing on the old ingrained pattern recognition that you built up before you were tilted by the 8-6 of clubs hand. And then the stuff that comes after that, like they can't have it again, and I just lost, and I really don't want to lose this pot, and why would I call a turn to just fold the river? The reason you can call the turn to just fold the river, by the way, well, you shouldn't call a turn, right? But the reason they're independent is that there are lots of branches that can happen after that. Villain can give up. You can hit a queen and win at showdown. You can hit a 3 and win at showdown. You can bluff the river when they give up and win that way. You can hit a club and get paid off when they bet smaller and you call. You can hit a club and get paid off when they check and you bet. There are enough things going on that it's not horrible to call the turn. It's not good to call the turn, but it's not horrible. But that doesn't mean you have to call 2x pot on this river card. So we folded. And we thought, okay, good. We have resisted the temptation to succumb to that. I just lost the pot. I must recoup. I must go out of my cave and fight. We resisted that human inclination. And then we were shown this hand. Villain was bluffing. And poker set for us yet another challenge. Don't you just love poker and its way of setting lovely challenges for us to solve when we really want to sit there and solve challenges? Didn't want to punch this plant at all. Definitely wouldn't want to do that. And so I sat there and I said, you know, nice hand. I was streaming at the time. I said, nice hand, villain. He did really well there to find that hand. And then I said, you know what? I'm really happy with how I played there. Okay, the turn call's dodgy, guys, but I'm really happy with how I played on the river. I really like the fold. And finding folds like that, and then being able to be objective about it, even when you get shown a bluff. Basically, what you're trying to do is be this stoic, immovable monk. You're sitting on your ledge of objectivity. After that hand, we got back a lot of the money we were down. We were down about 4 buy-ins in the session, and we got to a point where we ended the session down just about 2. And I see students do this all the time, where they have a losing session that turns into a winning one, and they very often say the following. Hey Pete, this session happened to me today. I suffered a series of brutal beats, but I didn't tilt. I got my head down, I played well, and I managed to grind it all back. I finished the session up. I am proud of myself. And I say, no, you did suffer bad variance, and then you enjoyed good variance. And you might have played well after suffering the bad variance, but that's not what caused you to win. In the short term, we have winning sessions because we run good, and we have losing sessions because we run bad. And the magnitude of that depends on how well we play. And sometimes our skill level can swing a losing session into a winning one, or a winning session into a losing one. But that's not incredibly common. It's more likely that how well you play just has some long-term gradual effect, which of course eventually becomes everything, becomes the whole point. But in the short term, it's not the point yet. So it's very important to understand that you can't just accredit your losses to bad variance and your small gradual wins to good play, because winning lots of small pots consecutively is a type of positive variance. So what do we do about this? How can we get closer to being on the green line to achieving our poker goals instead of failing at them due to our bad reactions to losing sessions? Here's an idea. You only have to play well until the end of your session. And if you are a responsible, professional, serious poker athlete, then you will not play sprawling 5-hour sessions that you didn't plan on playing. Okay, if you're on a great table, you're a live player, you have to do that sometimes. But if you're just in a normal, fast fold pool, you're playing Russian Cash, Zoom Blitz, whatever it's called, and you've scheduled a session for an hour, and then you run bad and you get down and you decide you have to break even and you play for 4 hours, there's not much hope for you as a poker player until you fix that. The first thing we need to do is stick to planned session length and finish the session, but don't play any more than that. Don't run away, don't just snap close down the tables because you lost the pot. You've got to build the mental muscle to withstand losing, but don't play past your agreed session length. Make a covenant with yourself that you don't break. Second thing, you should try to play your A game now that you've just lost the pot, and it's going to feel really wrong, and you're going to feel less curious about the game and like you care less. You're going to feel dejected and like it's okay to just like not really try and hope something good happens. But if you want to succeed at this game, you really have to fight that, and it's going to be hard to fight it. It's going to require emptying your willpower reserves, but the good news is that you only have to fight it until the end of your session. So if you're 20 minutes into a 60-minute session, you have a tough task ahead of you for 40 minutes, but can you keep it together? Can you try and play at minimum your B+ game for another 40 minutes? Can you do that? Because doing that is what gets you to the green light. Doing that is what allows you to become superhuman, because this is a human weakness and you can overcome it if you have the right reaction. The next thing I would do is I would remind myself that it still matters what I do, that my long-term goal, that myself of next year, that myself 5 years from now, that myself of yesterday really wanted me to play my best and really wanted to play good poker. So the fact that the self of the moment, who is vibrating with these emotions, who is in the throes of this delusion about how much it matters if they try, about how poker's cruel and all of this victim mentality, that guy doesn't get a say. Like, I know he feels like not trying. He feels like giving up. He feels like forcing things and taking bad bluff spots and not folding where he needs to. But it's not up to him to determine how I play in the next 40 minutes. I need to try to be faithful to the me I aspired to be before the session started, before I took that beat, before I got knocked out and I couldn't think straight. If you're a UFC fighter or a boxer, you get caught with a really bad shot, right? Like knocks you down. You have to like stagger back to your feet. And for the next few minutes, you can't really fight that well. You're just in survival mode until the end of the round, and then maybe you recover, right? You that trained for 15 years, that's who you owe it to try to do your best in that moment. It's the you of a year from now that won that belt and made all that money and had a successful boxing or UFC career. That's who you owe it to. And in poker, it's no different. You just took a beating. Your head is vibrating. You can't see straight, but you owe it to your other selves. The versions of you throughout time who exist, not right now, but in way more instances than just right now. And maybe your best is C game. Maybe that's it. That's all you're capable of, is staying out of trouble in that hand, folding because you're unsure there. But that's a hell of a lot better than that purple line. If there's another line in between the green one and the purple one, imagine that one, let's say it's an orange line. You could get to that one by just playing C game instead of F game. And then eventually one day you might take that C game and turn it into A minus game. You can do this. But you've got to stop putting the self of now first. The self of now is like a screaming baby. It wants your attention. It's like, wah, this happened to me. I'm not okay. I'm the victim. Make it okay for me. And it's a vulnerable child, basically. And it's screaming. And it's loud and it's really hard to ignore. And it's really difficult not to let it take the reins, because we're wired to let a screaming baby get its way. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to parent them. Found this out in the last 6 months. It's very, very hard. But you have to tell that screaming kid in your own brain that's just lost that pot, that's reeling from it. You have to say to that kid, it's okay. I get it that you're hurting, but right now you don't get to control what we're doing. Like if you're in a car and your child starts screaming in the car, you don't just suddenly stop the car in the middle of the freeway / motorway to deal with your child, right? You say, shush, it's okay. I have to handle this. Daddy has to drive, kind of thing. And that's what it's like here as well. You still have to drive the car of your session to the destination that is the end of the session. As you can probably tell, this is not going to be an overnight fix, but a long-term struggle, like everything is in poker. But by acknowledging that you're losing sessions and how you handle them are massively impactful in whether you achieve your poker dreams, you can take the first step towards those goals and ambitions. At Carrot Corner, we give you another path to achieving your poker ambition, which is to get a rigorous, comprehensive, structured poker education. The Carrot Poker School sets you quiz questions, exam tasks, and there is an end of grade exam after every grade of the school with a feedback video. We lay out all of our courses with syllabuses on carrotcorner.com to tell you what they all are, what's included in every episode of every video, and each of those episodes is professionally edited with care and love. We do not spoon feed you at Carrot Corner. We tell you why things happen and how they happen, so you can build a completely cohesive web of ideas so that you can understand the inner workings of the game. What you can do if you go over to Carrot Corner in the next 5 days is use the code SPOONBAD. One word. Spoon bad. Spoon feeding is bad. And that will get you 20% off all courses and bundles. Until next time, don't play 8-6 suited. It only gets you in trouble. Now get out of here and start playing better when you're losing. Bye for now.